So good morning, everyone. It is 10:45, and Kim, I'm going to give it one more minute. We'll start at 10:46. All right, it's right on 10:46. So welcome everyone. My name is Jennifer Cline, and you have joined the What Administrators Need to Know About Special Education, and we altered it a little bit and added in light of COVID. So before we get started, I'm going to introduce myself, and then we also have two other co-hosts, and I'm going to have them introduce themselves. My name is Jennifer Cline. I am the current State Special Education Director. Just a little background for those of you who don't know me, I actually only see a couple of names that I recognize. So I was a speech pathologist for 5 years and have been in education now for 20. So the last 15 years I've been working as a special ed administrator, both in a cooperative and then at Great Falls Public Schools before coming to OPI. I believe in the work that we do and wanted to come to OPI to support all of the administrators and teachers across our state because of all the amazing things that I saw in my time in the districts. It's an amazing job and it's really difficult, and I have such admiration for all of you who are out there in the field. The two co-hosts we have today, we have Mandy Gibbs. I'll let her introduce herself. She's from OPI. And then we also have Michelle Halberg, who is a special ed director or a special administrator in the state. So Mandy, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Sure. My name is Mandy Gibbs, and I'm the Early Assistance Program Director at OPI. I have now been in this role for almost 6 years, which is hard to believe. I too am feel very blessed that I get a chance to do this work, and I've always wanted to work in special education law, actually. I did my undergraduate in psychology and then moved back to Montana. I'm originally from Kalispell, but moved back to Montana to go to the University of Montana Law School with the intent of somehow working special education law into my life. When I first started at OPI, I actually did the state complaint investigations before I moved into this role. And we'll get more into what the early assistance program is as the presentation goes on, so I'm not going to spend time doing that now. Michelle?
Thank you, Mandy. I'm Michelle Halberg. I am a special education administrator for Gallatin-Madison Special Ed Co-op, and I'm honored to join this group of speakers from OPI today, and we'll just give a little reminder I put in the chat. If you have specific questions or a point that you'd like us to expand on, please just tuck it in the chat and I'll find a way to get it to the attention of someone who can make up a great answer.
I like how you say makeup. Well done, Michelle. So before we get started, I just wanted to say, first of all, thank you all for what you did last spring, working to make sure that our students had access to education. What you're doing right now, trying to get ready for the school year coming up, and then what you're about to do. I think this next year is going to be one like never before. We need to be prepared for whatever comes at us. So just starting out saying thank you, and that we recognize all of the hard work that's going on moving forward. Just a little bit about the goals for today. First, we're going to review for you some of the OPI special education resources that we have. Then we want to talk about some of the core concepts or core ideas of IDEA that we'd like you to keep in mind as you're moving forward. It's really difficult to make decisions right now with so much unknown, but what we do know right now is that we have to implement IDEA. We're not seeing a lot of changes. We're still waiting on a lot of information. So with the idea that if you understand the core concepts of IDEA and understand why they were there, what is the intent, you'll be more empowered to make decisions that align with that. And then the final thing that we want to discuss is what the OPI special ed units plan is moving forward. So we're going to start out with going over some of the resources. For those of you who are on the call, I noticed a couple of special ed administrators on the call. We're going to go over the special ed website that we created last spring and show you what some of those resources are. And so you guys will have seen this. It's coming, it's coming. There we go. So we had a lot of questions coming in that we needed to revise some guidance on. There was some information that was coming out from OSEP, and we really were hearing from the field that they were struggling with where to find the information. And then there was so much information coming at everybody at once, we took it upon ourselves to vet a lot of that information and try to choose the pieces that were most relevant at the current time and put that in one spot. We have maintained this piece of the website and our plan is to continue to update it. But what I really wanted to point out to you was we have really great relationships with principals and special ed administrators across the state. And so we had people that were reaching out to a number of individuals within our unit, and we wanted to ensure that we were giving consistent information back. So we created a team that would vet those questions, and then we would make an effort, we would communicate that back as one. That's really helped, and our plan is to continue that in the fall. And so that is this email questions to spedcovid@mt.gov. It's really helpful so that we can make sure that if we're giving somebody on the east side of the state an answer, we're wording it the same way on the west side of the state. And when I was in the field, I heard a lot about hearing different answers from OPI when questions came out, and it all depended on who you talked to. And within our unit, we're really making an effort to not have that happen. And then especially right now, when we in this time of unknown, we're really hoping that people will access that. The other piece on this website, we have a tab for federal guidance. Our state guidance is very close to federal guidance. We follow, we really don't stray a lot from the federal guidance. So there was specific information that came out from OSEP, from OCR, that was helpful for districts, and we wanted districts to be able to access that and read that for themselves right away. So we posted those on the website. There's a few more that have come out that we need to get up there. And you can just click on these links and then you'll see exactly what was said about, like for this one, for example, is FERPA and virtual learning, if it comes up. So the other thing that's on the website was we needed to give some specific directions in terms of our state guidance. So on the website, you'll see a tab, and we've tried to group the questions that came in that we felt like needed to be responded to within guidance, so they were general enough that it would be applicable for everyone across our state. So if we had questions around IEPs, we answered those. And then we tried to put the dates on there because so much information was coming at us quickly. At this point, we're planning on leaving those dates up there, and we'll just see how the year goes if we need to continue to show those. We were looking, there was a ton of information coming around professional learning, and our staff was, asking, our staff across the state was asking, what do we attend? What's the most important thing to know? So we added that information, and then the same issue happened with resources. There was just every entity was putting together resources. So we really went through those and vetted those. And we've got some more that we went through this summer and we'll be adding on there. And then the other thing that we did was we had weekly calls with our special ed administrators across the state. And we received a lot of good feedback about that being helpful. And what we would do is we would put the information under the director calls. Whoops, sorry about that. And nothing is in there now because we only left it up for about a week because things were changing so quickly that we didn't want people getting wrong information. So in addition to what's already on our website, the special education website, this is additional information and we'll continue to do that. The other piece that we wanted to talk to you about was, sorry, you have to give me some grace. I'm not used to presenting in Zoom. The Early Assistance Program, which Mandy oversees. So we'll go ahead and let Mandy talk about the Early Assistance Program.
Thanks, Jennifer. Yes, so those of you that I haven't had a chance to speak with before, or we haven't met, like I said, I'm the Early Assistance Program Director. And as you all probably are aware, under IDEA, there is set out dispute resolution options for parents and school districts. The state of Montana actually goes a little bit further with its dispute resolution, and in our administrative rule, which is cited there for you on the slide, 3660, says that our superintendent is going to provide ongoing systematic and informal dispute resolution, referred to as the Early Assistance Program. So Montana as a state actually has more informal early dispute resolution than is actually required under the IDEA. What this means is that anybody can contact us for early assistance. And by us, I should clarify a little bit more too, because I don't know how many of you would have had the chance to meet our newest addition. We got a new paralegal. Her name is Angie Greiner, and she assists me in the Early Assistance Program, which has been extremely beneficial. She kind of came on right before COVID hit, so it's been perfect. So when you call us, you will either get her or myself, just to kind of give you a heads up. But anybody can reach out for early assistance at OPI, whether you call the Early Assistance Program specifically, being Angie or myself, or you can call, the Special Education Division, and they also can offer technical assistance and early assistance in a lot of issues that may come up regarding special education. We receive calls from parents or guardians, school districts, other public agencies, attorneys, advocates, anybody looking for information. And one of the biggest things that we do is try to offer technical assistance. As you heard me say in my introduction, I am an attorney, but I'm an attorney for the Office of Public Instruction. So I can't give legal advice to parents or school districts, but I do try to stay up to date as to, the laws. I can assist you in trying to find out where things are in the IDEA or in our Montana implementing law or guidance that has come out, and just kind of let anybody that calls in know where they can find more information. That's a big part of what we do. And a lot of times that's all that's necessary to resolve the dispute that's going on, is just to be able to access that information to find out what the law actually says. We also allow parents and school districts to call in. Sometimes, I will get a parent call, and then I will reach out to the school district and informally try to resolve a dispute that may be, that may be happening. It's an informal process. It's voluntary. There's nothing that makes parties have to call in at this point. It's just a matter of us trying to be of assistance early on before things really reach impasse. As I mentioned before, we don't provide legal advice. So it is just kind of a voluntary, informal process that we don't, it's not meant as us trying to come in and, tell school districts what to do. We really do want to try to assist parties in working through a dispute that may come up.
Angie, do you mind if I jump in real quick?
Yep.
So one of the main goals of the early assistance or the technical assistance that we do with the OPI is to keep the decision making in the hands of the parties that know the student the best. That's why we put so much effort into answering questions and being proactive to deal with conflict or disagreement early on, which is what Mandy's talking about, is that non-formal process.
Yes, absolutely. And I would say the one time too, and we're not going to get into this too much in this presentation today, but if a state administrative complaint is filed, then it's actually also written into Montana's administrative rule that the first 15 business days you'll be working with the early assistance program to see if there's a way that we are able to resolve that dispute before going on. And again, the whole idea behind that is to leave the decision-making power with the parties that know the student best and try to resolve it before going on and getting, decision by after an investigation that's just kind of, here's what it is. It gives the parties a chance to try to really figure out what's best for that student and move on. Well, and I do have some exciting news, at least I'm excited about it. We actually updated our dispute resolution webpage. And I'll ask Jennifer to go to that if she doesn't mind clicking on the link.
While you make that transition, Mandy, I would tell you as an administrator of special education on the ground is that I love getting a call from Mandy Gibbs. I love it. She calls me and she says, you know, Michelle, we have a parent who's a little concerned. And this is what I hear. And it's the opportunity to go, gosh, either I didn't know that they had a concern. B, I'm on it. I have this knowledge about this child and this family and where we're at in the process. And it's a collegial kind of conversation. Again, not specific advice as to what I should do or what the district should do, but she will tell me if there's a landmine in my way. She will tell me about don't go beyond here. That could be a spot where you want to find another solution. And so the opportunity for some follow-up, and I know that my own experience has been, again, that Mandy has said to a parent, hey, you know what? I know Michelle Halberg, and I know she's inflexible, not collaborative. No, she never says that. She just says, hey, why don't you reach out to Michelle? I know she would want to know this. I know she would be interested in helping you find some solution. And as a cooperative director or administrator of special education, that is so important to me because I, as omnipresent as I feel I am some days, it really isn't true. We can't be in the buildings. We don't always know if something is brewing a little bit and that parent needs a little bit more attention, an opportunity to have us listen and to think deeply about their concerns. And so I love Mandy Gibbs.
You are so sweet, Michelle. Thank you. I appreciate you sharing that. And really, we do just want to be a good resource for parents. That's not to say that, there aren't issues that come up that are way beyond us. They do come up. Sometimes there's really big issues and we have to use some of these other dispute resolution options. But a lot of time it really is for parents, especially just knowing where to go with their questions, knowing maybe how to bring it up, how do they reach out, and that's something that, that I can assist with.
The other thing, I forgot to preface this when we started the presentation that we're going to be bouncing back and forth between the three of us, so bear with us. But the other thing I wanted to make sure that you all understood is that when a parent calls us and are talking with us about an issue, before we call and talk to you about it, we always ask the parent, do you mind if I call and talk? It's not good practice for us to just call without letting the parent know, and that is extended the other way as well. So if you call us to talk about an issue, it's the same both ways. Yeah,
thank you for clarifying that, Jennifer, because sometimes it really is just getting information, and then it clears it up, and a lot of times though, if I do feel like it's a case where I feel like the district would really benefit from knowing what's happening, I do tell the parent why I feel like it would be important for me to call or how it may be helpful for me to give a call. And we really want this to be seen as we really want to be helpful in getting that information out there. And it's not, oh, I can't believe I got a call from the early assistance program, or, this parent must be really mad. A lot of times I get parents that aren't really mad at all. They're just trying to find out information. So I just hope that you keep that in mind as well, and feel free to call us because we really do want to help. So we're there. You should use us. Yes, Michelle.
Mandy, the other concept that happens, I think, when a parent initiates that contact is that you not only listen to that, but you talk to them about the whole continuum of services and what that means. And so it's an educational opportunity for parents to understand kind of how we can support them and their child. So you let them know what that means, that early assistance, and then what else is available through the OPI. So thank you.
Absolutely. So this is our new website. There's a little introduction here on the first page that kind of describes the early assistance program. And then as you scroll down a little bit, you'll see each of those dispute resolution options that are available through OPI. And the ones that are required under the IDEA are mediation, the state administrative complaint, due process hearings, and expedited due process hearings. We're not going to concentrate a lot on those today, but I just want you to know where you can go to find more information about each of those. And on each of those pages, I don't know if you want to click on one, Jennifer. We're going to talk more about IEP facilitation here. So go ahead and click on that one maybe. And I'll just go ahead and tell you a little bit about our facilitation program now. This is, again, this is offered by OPI free of charge to parents and school districts, not required under the IDEA. It's completely voluntary, but it is a form of dispute resolution where there's an impartial facilitator that comes to the IEP team meeting and tries to help the parent and the school district resolve their issue, some issue that's in the IEP where they may need a little help, whether it's help with communication or it's help with problem solving. You know, again, that idea being let's keep the decision-making power with those people that know the students best, that being the IEP team, which of course includes the parent. We do have an actual, I mean, there's a process you have to go through to request an IEP facilitator. That very first document there that says explanation of the process will lead you through what that process is. So, you know, you can come back and find this now whenever you want to, which will hopefully be helpful to everybody. I was sending this out a lot, and so it'll be just really helpful to have it on the website. But basically, we do require written consent by both parties that they're willing to try this before we would ever send a facilitator in, you know, to your meeting or your Zoom meetings now, as we've been doing. You know, we have to have that written consent from both of you. So what happens is we get that, and we don't have our form to request IEP facilitation on the website, but we can easily get it to you if you need it. You can just call either Angie or myself or email us. Let's see here. Jennifer has jumped ahead to, no, you're good, you're good. Jennifer has jumped ahead here to our new chart that we've made that is specific to Montana and also includes the early assistance program on there. And just does kind of a quick overview of each of those different dispute resolution options and is kind of a comparison. So it just gives you a really good overview as, you know, what's out there, kind of what it means. And then, you know, there's places on each of the links where you can go to find more specific information, which is usually the procedural safeguards. But this is just a really nice overview when you're trying to see the difference between each of the processes. Also, can we go back to the IEP facilitation page, please? I just wanted to point out too, there's a newer resource that came out specific to administrators.
Sorry, you can talk about it. It's the cadre one. I'll get there.
Yeah, that would be great. So on each of those pages for the dispute resolution options, there is also links to Cadre, which has done some great brochures. And up until now, they've always been for parents, but there's a new one that came out that's talking about IEP facilitation from an administrator's perspective. So again, just something so that you know these resources are here as we enter into a new school year, so that you can come back and maybe look at this if you have reason to. Yeah, it's great. They've got some really great resources on here. I love Cadre. So I think we can move ahead, Jennifer, and I probably messed up a little bit, and then I kind of might have covered the facilitation slides already.
No, I think you did great and probably did. I apologize. So for those of you, I've never presented via Zoom before. I've always used GoToMeeting, so I'm struggling a little bit. So just offer me some grace. Yep, I think we covered all of that. We covered the facilitation webpage, right?
Yes, we did. Yeah, I kind of worked that all in.
Okay.
And I appreciate it. And I'm not familiar with Zoom either. I've only used GoToMeeting. So this is kind of there's a learning curve here, I think, for me as well. So thank you for navigating. Yeah.
I would just kind of wrap up before we get to communication, although because of just my experience, I've had the opportunity to participate in IEP facilitation a couple times. One time when the relationship was so severely damaged between the district and the parent that we had the need for someone to come in very objectively and help us ensure that we were engaging parent, thinking about request, and really having to find a way to set a limit as to what is special education, what is FAPE, and what isn't part of that free appropriate public education. And it was so beneficial to have a non-emotional person engaged there, because by the time you get there, you're thinking that you've tried everything and you've done everything, and you're stuck. You're just stuck. And so having somebody come in was a very positive experience, and it wasn't the district is bad, the parents are good, the parents are crazy, the district is awesome. It wasn't anything like that. It really was this whole shift of focus, help us rethink, move it into a spot so that we could have perspective again. And so very, very valuable. And in the two occasions that I've had that, we've had one where we really couldn't come to a solution at the end of it, but we really gave it a great opportunity, and we just weren't there. It just wasn't going to happen. And so it went further into the resolution process.
Right.
Nice way to say it. It got a little tougher. Relationships never healed. Yeah. But then in another instance, I feel like the facilitator came in and really helped to ensure that parent was heard and we were in alignment with parent. And it was very positive. I think that it modeled for us that whole component of meaningful parent engagement. And this is your transition to your next communication slide, because we were doing more telling than we were listening. And I think we really got to the bottom of the parents' concern, thanks to the facilitator. So I would tell you two experiences, one where we moved in and came to resolution and we got an IEP signed, and one in which we didn't. But it was all very positive for the team.
And I really appreciate that, Michelle. That's invaluable for you to share your experiences, having been through it. And that's one thing I would say too, is please reach out early, because facilitation really does work the best when things are just kind of, maybe you've had one meeting, maybe two, where things just aren't going as well as planned. Reach out then. Don't wait until, we have had it before where we've tried to facilitate when, the district has met with this parent 6 or 7 times already. And it gets harder each time just because people get more ingrained in, in that impasse. So the earlier that you reach out, typically the better. And there is going to be those times where, it might not work, but when it does, it's really great to be able to move on more quickly
and the
than going through that.
Sorry, I tried to turn my video off because I was not getting enough bandwidth. But the other thing to keep in mind is that the IEP facilitators, they know special ed law, but really what they're trained in is communication. They're trained in how to make sure that you're getting to the core of what the issue is, and that people are all able to express their concerns and desires, and really getting to the why. So that's really what the facilitation is that's what they're trained in, is how to get that communication happening between the parent and the school.
Yeah, really good point. Really good points, you guys. Thank you. And I love this slide. Jennifer found this great little cartoon, and I think it's awesome. But communication, it really is a big deal, and especially through, you know, this pandemic that we're in now. My one thing, if you can just keep in mind, keep communicating and keep documenting all of your communication, because I know you guys are doing it. So just make sure that you're documenting all of your attempts for communication and with parents. It's incredibly important. You know, if you guys can have, as a district, a process for who's going to be communicating with parents and how often they're going to check in with parents, it's going to go a really, really long way. I can tell you that I've started just probably within the past few weeks to have more parent calls coming in. And the majority of them really can boil down to communication issues at this point. When I sat back and kind of thought of the ones that have called and what they were asking, and how we were able to help them work through them, it all boiled down to communication. So I just, you know, I can't stress that enough. And if you feel like you may need early assistance, calling us earlier rather than later is more beneficial, I believe, in the long run. That's not to say don't call us when it's later too, but just keep us in mind early on. But yeah, I don't know, Jennifer or Michelle, if you have any more to add to that, but that's just one thing that I really am seeing as the calls are coming in, is it's just, you know, parents really feeling like they need that communication with all the uncertainty that's out there.
You know, the only comment that I would make is pre-COVID, kind of that always communication, as well as now, is that, you know, I find that we have to be more flexible in our modality of communication if we really want parents to engage and feel safe in that. I think we have to think about the setting of that communication. I'm not going to call that parent into my office and have a big crew of other folks there to have this kind of conversation if they needed some time. And one of the other things that I'm learning is that for parents with students with exceptionalities, sometimes it's hard to get to the why they're so upset or so frustrated, and so I need to do some good active listening, some follow-up. I need to name what I hear and talk about that it's okay to feel afraid for your child. It's okay, you know, to do that. You need to have time. And if you don't have time, my advice to you as administrators is to let parent know that you want time, and when can we plan enough time so that we're not going, yeah, okay, I got it, all right, so okay, so your kid's being bullied, all right, you know. So you want to spend time, you want to make time for that conversation early. And documentation isn't just a CYA for you, it really can be your memory tool, as well as hearing a pattern in those comments. All of a sudden you go, oh my gosh, 3 times in a row they've told me this, and now I see what it is. And so communication is more than documentation of your attempts. It really can be looking at content over time. So please do spend time and be ready to listen.
Okay. So we're going to move on to some of those core concepts and what to keep in mind moving forward. I think it's really important, and you've probably heard people saying this since this COVID had started, that IDEA was not written to address a global pandemic. So we're struggling with it. We have these requirements, these regulations in place, and how do we apply them to our current situation? The thing to keep in mind is we are going to continue to communicate with each other. We're going to continue to leverage our partnerships. And I'll talk a little bit more about how we've been doing that. And we don't know the answers. We're still waiting for information from OSEP. We are, we all are planning for the beginning of the school year, but we don't necessarily know what it's going to look like 6 weeks in. So we need to know that we're planning for right now. We need to know that we're going to stay nimble. But when I was in the field, one of the things that I used to tell my staff was, tell me what's best for the kiddo. What does this kiddo need? And then we'll talk about how it fits into the law. And the reason I said that was because we got so hung up on the process. We know we need to have an IEP meeting and it has to be within this amount of days. We know we need to do this assessment. We know we need to do this. We know we need to do this. But my teams were forgetting to ask about why. What's the intent of that? And so, I was trying to empower them with, if you understand how why IDEA was written or why that particular component is there, it will empower you to come up with solutions that will align with what that intent was. So I want to spend some time really talking about that. The other big concern that we have, and I'll talk about this a little bit more when we get into LRE, because that's one of the components I want to talk about, is we get so stuck on the idea that we have to provide special education services, and we forget why. What is special education services? Why do we have them? We have to remember that special education services are there as an avenue for kiddos, students, children with disabilities to have access to the general ed curriculum. So special education is in response to whatever the general ed program is at the time, which right now we might be doing in face-to-face education for 2 months, and then all of a sudden we might have to go back into a shelter in place. So we're going to have to look at special education programs related to what general education is at the moment. And that's going to be a challenge. That's going to be difficult. So I want to talk about some of the, I'm trying to move forward, some of the core concepts of IDEA that will be the most helpful as you move into the beginning of the school year. And there are more. There's about 8 that I usually talk about, but we're going to focus on these 4. We're going to spend most of our time on least restrictive environment because that's really what we're going to be addressing as the general ed setting changes. But first and foremost, I want you to think about child find and zero reject. And essentially what that means is that every district has the responsibility to seek out and find and identify any student within their jurisdiction that has a disability, and then provide the appropriate services. One of the things that I notice is we often will say, we think they have a disability, but they haven't come to us. That is a problem. That's a concern because we have the responsibility to seek them out. And I wanted to point that out at this time because we're going to be struggling with so many different issues that are coming towards us that we might decide we're going to put something on the back burner. And I don't want us to get caught with that one, not looking at and moving forward with finding out if a child has a disability. Before I move on from child find, Michelle, do you or Mandy have anything you want to add to that? No?
Jennifer, I would just say that it's not, you're not looking at in child find, and I hear this a lot of times, or not a lot of times, but sometimes, you're only looking at whether you suspect a child has a disability or you have reason to believe they may have a disability. You're not actually going to that next step of, are they eligible under the IDEA? So I think that's just to make that distinction.
Mm-hmm. That's all. If you have questions about this, please just put them in the chat and Michelle will watch that. The other thing I wanted to talk about was FAPE, so free and appropriate public education. The biggest things to keep in mind for this one is that we need to really think about free and we need to think about appropriate. So all students across our country have the right to a public education, but students with disability have the right to a free and appropriate public education. And the reason that it's outlined that way in IDEA is because historically school districts were allowed to have students with disabilities come in, and essentially they had then access to the general curriculum, but nothing really happened. They didn't really learn anything. So that leads us to looking at, okay, what's appropriate for this child? And then the other piece, free, these kiddos cost more, you know that, we all know that. And what would happen is parents would be asked to pay for certain things that the school district might need in order to have that student in their building, and so then parents wouldn't send them. So I see free as becoming more of an issue when we're looking at, are we going to be remote? Are we going to be in the buildings? What about those kiddos who have more impactful disabilities that can't wear face masks or have sensory issues, and we need to make sure that they're sanitized, that we're sanitizing the environments and those kinds of issues. So we just need to make sure that we're very cognizant of free. Appropriate, I think we really, we got some additional guidance when the Andrew F. case came out. So that was a case that talked about, gave us a little bit more information about what FAPE was. And the biggest part of that to know is that what they essentially defined appropriate as being whatever the student needs in light of their circumstances, which I think is really important in this situation. Michelle just sent me a text that she's watching the time. Thank you, Michelle. I got distracted. We have 20 minutes left. Anyway, so appropriate would be, if we have to do this for all students, and we're saying that this special education student is a general education student first, so then we should do it for this general education student. But we have a group of students where that might not be appropriate for. And that's a line that we as special ed administrators walk very carefully in times when we don't have a global pandemic. But I see that as being more of a concern in this time with the global pandemic. Michelle, do you have any specific examples of when you've seen that kind of a situation happen? And any advice from somebody in the field?
So Jen, you were talking about least restrictive environment?
Sorry, no, I was talking about appropriate.
Okay, yeah, I think I think one of the things that is coming up, and we talked about it just a little bit in the standards-based grading, is what are assessments? All students on IEPs, we talk about district-wide assessments, and one of the things that I'm thinking about in light of COVID is, will those benchmark assessments really be a measure of, when we come back to see kind of what is our beginning of the year status, will those really be reflective for students with identified, discrete, and sometimes maybe significant reading, writing, or math disabilities? And so I guess my encouragement, this happens during the year always, where I think, that's really not measuring the student's progress within their IEP. Why are we using the district-wide test? That's not that child's skill set that is progressing. And so taking a look at assessment as appropriate assessment is another component of that in my mind. And I surely have seen things like district-wide assessments become a tool to beat the teacher up with. And I feel we have to really understand that they are providing specialized instruction. That's what they're doing. So I think my only comment is in that assessment piece at this point, is that it isn't always appropriate for students to have that district-wide assessment as a means of progress monitoring or instruction.
I don't see any comments in the chat box, so I just want to see if anybody has any questions about that at this point. And I am going to try to leave some time at the end for some questions. So I'm going to keep going, and then if something pops in the chat box, that's great. The next thing I want to talk about is parent participation. This is one of the pieces that's really difficult, is that parents of students with special needs have more rights than our general education parents, and that's because historically they were left out of the conversation, and these students were excluded and essentially discriminated against. So we need to make sure, and we talked about this a little bit under the communication, but making sure that we're really truly talking to them, getting their input, really getting down to, if they have a different vision than what the district has, getting down to why it is that they have that vision. And the other piece of that is making sure that we're communicating very clearly what our requirements are, what our goals are, what that looks like to us. I often sat in IEP individual meetings with parents, and I thought we were being very clear with them about, this is what we're talking about, this is what this is. And I had one particular case, actually it was when I was at East Middle School, so Paul, you might remember this one. But a parent, she and I just kept sitting down because we could not come to resolution. And essentially I said to her, tell me what that looks like to you. So your daughter goes into class, what does that look like? And so she explains it to me, and I said, oh, we are talking about the same thing. I call it this and you're calling it this, but that's exactly what this looks like to us too. So really, like Michelle had talked about earlier, taking that extra time and getting down to exactly what it is that they're trying to say. And I use that strategy a lot. Tell me what that looks like. So tomorrow your kiddo comes into our building. Tell me what that looks like to you. What's the first thing that they would do? And really just help me understand. Mandy, do you have anything you want to add about parent participation?
I think you've covered all of it really well, actually.
Okay.
Nothing more at this time.
Okay, so I'm trying to go quickly because, go ahead, Michelle.
As you prepare your next slide, I think one of the opportunities that we have to really engage parents is around those initial evaluation reports, initial IEPs, and I guess my bias and my hope is that is where we're spending a great deal of time, and that it isn't just in the meeting. One of the things I think that can kind of shape that relationship going forward is if we're rushing through a meeting, that we are saying, you're holding my teachers out of the meeting because of this time, and we've got to wrap this up. And so even though I know it's very difficult to pull together that many people in one place to support that, I would tell you that when a parent has a comment or they're saying, what if, or could I, or that you take a little time to explore that during those times, and or that we're kind of teaching them in these meetings what the special ed process is each time. Mm-hmm. We're doing this because it relates here. And so plan for it, take a little breath, try to be there in person, be engaged, be genuine, think like a parent, ask a question if you're watching their facial expression and your teacher or your speech pathologist or your director is not able to follow what the parent is doing, ask. So that seems like you used a term, Michelle, I don't recognize. Mm-hmm. Ask, go ahead and ask. So be engaged.
Mm-hmm. So actually that leads us into, I want to talk a little bit about prior written notice, and I don't have a slide for this, but last couple of years, the state has been requiring districts to complete an additional form at the end of the IEP. And this is not a new requirement in the IDEA law. What we had been telling districts before was that as long as you were documenting these components that were required in what is now a prior written notice document, then we wouldn't need to do it. We were noticing that districts were struggling with getting that information in. So just to go back and what is the purpose of that prior written notice document, it is exactly what Michelle was just describing. It is the communication to the parent that this is what we plan to do based on all of the information that we took in, including what questions you had and what information you gave us. This is the offer that we're making, and this is the data and what we used to make that offer. If you have more questions about prior written notice, just let us know or write it up in the chat. I'm going to keep moving on because we don't have a lot more time. Least restrictive environment is one of the core concepts that as school districts we're going to be struggling with through this pandemic. So remembering that least restrictive environment, the concept of that is that all special ed students are general ed students first, and that what we're striving for is to make sure that they're able to participate in a general education program as best they can, or as close to the general education program as is appropriate for them. So we need to make sure that as our general education program is changing due to the health and safety restrictions, we're able to, number one, define what our general education program is, and then make sure that we have the data and the information to support why we're saying this is what the child needs as a special education program to allow them access to and progress in the general ed curriculum. And, you know, having been in the field for so long, I recognize that it's going to be difficult when we are starting the school year in one situation, and then 6 weeks down the road, we may be in a completely different situation. But our teams need to start thinking about, okay, what if we do go into a hybrid situation? What if we do go into a fully remote situation again? What will the student need in that situation? How do I collect that data? And why am I making that recommendation to the family that this is what we need? I think of all of the core components, the communication and parent participation and LRE are what we're going to be dealing with most often as we start the school in this new environment. The other thing that we need to be thinking about, or encouraging our IEP teams to be thinking about, is when we go to the use of more technologies, what are we doing to show what kinds of accommodations or additional skills a student with a disability might need in order to be successful in that environment? So we can't forget to do that piece. If we know that we are going to be, the possibility is that we're going to have students educated in front of a computer. Do they know how to run the computer? Do they know how to turn it on? I just lost my train of thought because Dick just walked in. Anyway, so we need to be thinking about those technological pieces that we need to be collecting some information on. Michelle or Mandy, do you have anything else you want to add?
No, I was just thinking, Jen, and I would appreciate any comments from the audience, is that, you know, sometimes participating in a general education setting involves a paraeducator. And so they are there to work alongside the teacher to help implement some of those accommodations and modifications. And so that thought process about access to the gen ed content, if it is in a different format, we have to kind of think a little bit about what is that role of the paraeducator? What is that access point? How can we do that in a different way? And so I'm thinking about how success in the general education classroom for some students relies on additional adult in the room. So right. Just a thought.
Yeah, and we do have a question in the chat, which is something we've been mulling over here at the OPI as well. And the question is, we're wondering about MANT with the current concern with COVID. And Karen also shared that we are right now continuing with doing the recertification portion of MANT training so that we can do that online. It's the holds, the second day of the MANT training that we are putting off. Right now, we're hoping that we can start doing those again in January. So if you have individual situations that you need to talk through with us about MANT certification, give us a call. Though also, and Dale Kimmett also is the person at the OPI who oversees our training of MANT, and his phone number is 444-0472. And Mary made a good point too, that she thinks the de-escalation techniques of MANT and CPI continue to be the emphasis, and that is absolutely true. So if you're not familiar with MANT and what MANT and CPI are, they're a training that they're essentially a de-escalation and understanding escalation training. And then there's a component that teaches staff how to safely hold students when there's a chance of physical harm. And the idea is that you're going to be able to de-escalate a student prior to having to put a hold on them. Anyway, so we have about 12 minutes left. I'm gonna quickly go through the rest of my slides, and then I see that Carla Miller has a question, and I'm gonna ask, after I finish going through the slides, we'll go back to these questions, because I think the rest of the slides we've pretty much covered. I just wanted to share with you what we are planning on doing going forward. We are planning and understanding that just like you as the districts, you need to be dynamic and be able to adjust as things change. We are attempting to do the same thing. We're going to continue to update our websites. One thing that I do have to tell you is it's been interesting coming from the districts into OPI, because I have a feel for what the districts need. And now I'm understanding more where the OPI's authority lies. And the OPI is not always able to offer everything that a district feels that they need. So one of the things that we've been able to do is leverage the partnerships we have with our MCASE group. So we at the OPI have been attending all of the regional MCASE meetings to hear what the questions are. Districts may have to be coming up with an individual district form, and how are they going to approach a certain situation that from a state perspective we can't necessarily say you have to use this form. So we just have this balancing act that we have to do. So being able to participate in those MCASE regional meetings has been really helpful. And then we have had regular special ed administrator meetings where it's similar format to this, where we give a lot of information and the special ed administrators join. We plan on continuing to do that. Michelle, can you talk real quick about MCASE, and then I'm going to go back to the questions.
Yeah, just I would encourage you to take a peek at the slide of getting our becoming an MCASE member as an affiliate of SAM. But I would tell you the power behind those regional meetings, and often your leaders there in the regions are initiating those. Our agenda sometimes can be pretty organic, and oftentimes one of the OPI staff are participating in there just to listen and to see if there is a common thread across the state. So I guess I ask the building administrators, superintendents, et cetera, to support your special education directors, coordinators to attend those meetings, to have that time, because that is where we talk about not necessarily the why, that technical advice, but so how are you guys doing that? What does that look like? What's your thought process behind that? Have you ever had this experience, and how did you handle it? And I feel that it's just really beneficial. It is a spot where folks can problem solve freely and talk openly, though. So please support them in attending.
Mm-hmm. And I will say from a state perspective, it has been really helpful to help guide what we have done moving forward. So that's been really helpful. Do you mind unmuting Carla Miller? Carla, can you give me a little more information about what you wanted to know about prior written notice? I said a lot, so I'm wondering if I should say it all again. What's your specific question?
Just that concise explanation of what exactly we need to do as administrators for that to meet that requirement of prior written notice. So,
well, I hope this answers your question. If not, you and I can talk about it later. But essentially, the prior written notice is the notice to the family that this, as a district, is our offer, which is the IP, is our offer to the student. The prior written notice it's when you fill it out correctly, it should talk about, we're offering this, let's just say education program. And the other thing I need to talk about really quick too is placement. And then we use this data to make that determination. So if it's, your progress monitoring, if it's benchmarks, if it's your individual classroom-based assessments, if it's a report that came in from somebody, really what it's saying is this is our offer and this is why. And it has a whole bunch of different pieces within that form. And so what I'm saying is your staff will complete that, but you need to understand as the administrator that you're in that meeting because you're saying, yes, as a district, we can offer this, we can provide this. So it's really important that you're engaged in those conversations. And then it's really important from my perspective to know what your staff is going to offer prior to going into those IEP meetings. I don't know if that helps at all. I'm not saying that as an administrator, that's a form that you necessarily fill out on your own, but as a team member, you need to know what's in that form. Does that help?
Yes, that did. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. The other thing I wanted to talk briefly about, and it was in one of my, it was a note in one of my slides, was placement. In placement, a lot of times folks are thinking is actually the location of where a student is educated. And in terms of special ed, placement is all of those pieces that make up the child's education. So we have to be really careful about the term that we use. They might be located in Ms. Halberg's room and then going to, Ms. Gibbs' room for math. All of that is placement. So when you're hearing and reading some of these cases or guidance that come out and they talk about placement, remember that placement is the offer. Placement is the whole kit and caboodle within what you're offering for that education for that student. Mandy, did you want to clarify that at all? Add anything?
No, I think you did good. Placement is not location. It is everything really that's in the IEP, the services that that student needs, the level of support, all of it. So you don't ever look at just where the student is put, like you said, what location they're in or what classroom. It's the whole offer of services for that student.
Yeah. So we are right on out of time. We're right at 11:45. I wanted to make one other comment. The idea around the core concepts of IDEA, one of the things that we're having discussions in our office about is having some trainings really talking about those core concepts with folks in the field, and maybe starting with our special ed directors at those regular meetings that we have. I would be curious to know if as administrators you would like to be included, or if we could look at a way for you to attend some of those trainings so that you maybe you don't need to know all of the nitty-gritty of how, but you really need to understand the why. And one of the things that we do notice is that a lot of the complaints and court cases that go forward are due to the fact that somebody in a leadership position wasn't fully aware of all the intricacies of IDEA, and so that's how a mistake was made. So we want to, we want to hear from you as to what it is that you as general ed administrators need to know, and then we'll work on putting something together for that. So you can put something in the chat or send us an email. And I'm sorry, I didn't even think about putting our emails on the website, but my email is my first and last name, JENIFERCLINE, .CLINE.
Go ahead and drop it in the chat box.
Thank you. Yep, I'll do that, and then we can then we can get off. Thank you.
One of the things I just wanted to add quickly when we're talking about training and et cetera is that I want to make sure that I echo the earlier thank you that Jennifer offered to all of you administrators who are participating today, because you're interested and want to truly understand the unique needs of students with disabilities, and those of us that are called on or have the opportunity to serve them, is that collaboration during COVID with our general education administrators, gen ed teachers, I really believe was ramped up. I believe we communicated better than ever, and I want to thank you for that and ask you to continue to work closely with your directors of special education. Those administrators, this is all we do. We geek out on the why of IDEA, and so please do have a conversation with us. We'd love to have a talk about that. So keep on including us.
All right. And I don't know about Mandy, but I don't geek out on anything. I'm as far away from geeking out as possible, and I'm teasing. So thank you to the school administrators for having us, and thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your summer.
Thank you, Jennifer, Michelle, and Mandy. It's a great session. For those of you still on the session, be sure to navigate back to the session webpage, scroll down, submit your evaluation so we can keep track of your renewal units earned. You have a 15-minute break, and then be sure to attend Paul Anderson's closing. So we'll see you in about 15 minutes.